This is part 2 of the video detailing my experiences with the Simon X8C. Originally it was all one video, but after allowing me to spend an hour and a half uploading it, YouTube rejected it because it was 2 minutes too long. Then they sent me a friendly note saying they would accept it if I sent them all of my personal information. I said, great, we could be friends and exchange information, and I'd send them mine. The second that YouTube owner Sergey Brin sent me his bank account numbers and his mother's middle name. Unfortunately, he hasn't had time to get back to me yet, so I've just put it up as 2 parts. Now, in the first part of the video, I spent a lot of time going over the flying characteristics of the plane, and I hate to be one of those, oh, don't try this at home, idiots. But this plane is difficult and unforgiving to fly. It packs a great deal of energy and is capable of smashing car windows or injuring people on the ground. The controller software is atrocious. It wanders constantly, up, down, side to side, back and forth. This is about as close as it will ever come to hovering. Every single second this plane is in the air, you need to be controlling it. And to do so, you need to think 3 or 4 seconds ahead. The plane does climb strongly. I have no doubt that it will go through the legal altitude limit. It is, however, a handful. It is vague and responds slowly. Even really experienced pilots are going to want to spend a lot of time learning this plane away from people and obstacles, and preferably in a location with some sort of soft landing surface. Now, in the first part of the video, we went over the camera which comes with the plane, which is basically a 1992 webcam and useless. So we'll get to the question of, can it fly a GoPro? But before we do so, one more thing. If you're actually thinking of flying a genuine GoPro on a $100 plane, you're out of your mind. If you're even thinking of flying an actual SJ Cam clone of a GoPro, you need to stop right now. No matter how good you are, you're going to have a minor accident with this plane at some point, and that accident is going to destroy the camera. So you need a $30 car camera, or maybe a $50 SJ4000, something which is disposable and which is not going to break your heart when it gets destroyed. Well, let's examine the car cam first. The car cam runs on standard USB voltage with this 5.0 and 3.29, which is what the X8 cam runs on. So I made a jumper and tried it. It will start the camera, but the car cam draws more current, and the controller software reads that as a short, and when you try to pair it, it shuts down. So I moved on to SJ4000. Now it weighs 155 grams, which is a whole lot more than the standard camera at 27, and the plane is vague and difficult to control with the standard camera. So I got a block of wood, put it on the plane, and it was able to lift it. So then I said, let me do something really stupid. I mounted the SJ4000 in its protective case with a helmet cam mount and 3M double-sided tape on the front edge of the plane. I did this so that I would try to keep the legs out of the picture. Then I went out on a day with 30-mile-an-hour gusts and tried to fly it around in the shadow of the house at 10 feet high. It was nearly uncontrollable, but the video was pretty impressive looking, so I was kind of stoked. I also tried it with the 720/60 frame setting on the camera, and although this is supposed to produce a better result than the 30 frame, I thought the 1080 30 frame looked a lot better. Well, a few days later, the wind let down slightly, and I decided I'm going to try to fly it higher. And above the trees, there's always a layer of turbulence. And every time I reached that layer, the plane went into emergency descent mode. Now, I covered this in the first part of the video, but essentially it comes down slowly, but out of control. Straight down, have no idea where it's going to land. I also had a minor crash. At about a height of 25 feet while descending, I tried to move the plane a couple feet to the right, and it basically fell out of the air. The damage, it landed on all four legs upright, but the damage this relatively minor incident caused was interesting. The arms on the fuselage, the seams came apart. There were stress marks on the body of the fuselage, and it was damage that I was able to put back together, but the damage to the plane paled compared to what happened with the camera. The mounting tab remained on the plane, but the lips that mount the camera shattered, and the camera came off. It didn't damage it, but man, that's a lot of energy. So that's what you're dealing with this plane. I then decided the problem was that the plane couldn't fly with the camera off-centered. So I found the center of gravity of the plane and marked it, and then filed off the original groove so I could move the mount further back from the bottom of the fuselage. Originally, I had it up in the front. I moved it about 3/4 of an inch to the rear, and that was the point at which it was right at the center of gravity. I then filled the camera with ballast, the camera case with ballast, and tried flying it. Although it didn't go into the emergency descent mode, it was almost completely out of control. It was very given to vortex stalls, and just the response of it was so crazy that it was scary. I tried to fly it by the camera to get some close-ups of it, and had an unplanned landing. I said, no problem, I'll take it back up in the air and fly it by the camera so it can come by close, and not really. Another unplanned landing. It just is uncontrollable. So I decided that the full weight was out of the question, and I had to do something. Well, the case itself weighs 93 grams empty, and the only real option at this point was what they call the belt cam mount, which supports simply the camera. There's no protection on it at all. It's a little frame that goes on, and the camera and the belt cam mount all together weigh about 85 grams. Now the problem with this is I knew a hard landing, that camera's coming flying out of that mount and destroy itself completely without question. But I mounted it in the middle. I put some foam blocks on the bottom of the legs so that if there was irregular surface on the ground, the camera wouldn't hit it. And it was a pretty stiff mount, and I was satisfied with it, and I went out to try it. Now, in this configuration, it flies to some extent, let's say. The plane is sluggish with the standard camera and impossible with the camera in the case, and this was kind of a middle ground between them. It was, however, extremely sensitive to a vortex stall when descending. This happened to me several times, and that's kind of scary because it's coming straight down, and it's not pleasant to be watching it when that happens. The video itself was a bit strange. It's clearly 1080 and very sharp and whatnot. There was some residual jello when the controller would take over the plane, like if you tried to hover or if you were going really slow. But the most noticeable characteristic is that the plane requires so much input that it's jerky. Now the props weigh about 9.4, 9.5 grams. Each one is about 1/10 of a gram different. But the real characteristic about them is they are all out of balance, really out of balance, not just a little. Every single prop was dramatically out of balance, and that can create jello. So there are a lot of videos on YouTube telling you how to balance them, so I'm not going to go into that here. But I balanced them and got them to the point where you can leave them in any position without them moving, and remounted them. The video was not appreciably better. It works best when you're under power. If you're 300 foot above the beach, you can probably head it off in one direction and get a decent video. Want to fly over a road, you can get reasonably decent video. What you can't do is fly it slow or just let it hover where the controller software operates on it, because when the controller software operates, the whole plane shakes. So the bottom line is the video is actually pretty disappointing. You can have nice video if you're willing to cut it up into 8 or 10-second clips, but the sort of travelogue kind of video of let's go over this house and down the valley, that's going to be all jerky and unpleasant. So the bottom line is it actually a game changer? Well, I guess I'd sum it up by saying supposedly this plane was built to carry a high definition, and in the end it will do so, but it really doesn't do it very well.